Welcome to Straight Talk for Real Life, produced by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, episode number 3. What does it take to achieve the biggest goals in your life, or to overcome the biggest challenges? In this episode, one of the world's greatest long-distance runners, Olympic medalist and American record holder Deena Kastor, is going to share her secret to unlocking your full potential. Listen in, because it could change the course of your life. Welcome to Straight Talk for Real Life. I'm Bob Peacock. In today's episode, I am so excited to talk with Deena Kastor. If you're a runner, you already know that Deena is a superstar. She has earned countless honors. She holds 8 current U.S. records in many events. She's an 8-time cross-country national champion, and she won the bronze medal for the women's marathon in the 2004 Olympics in Athens, which was America's first Olympic medal in the marathon in 20 years. Deena has also broken the ribbon on some of the world's most prestigious marathons, including the Chicago Marathon, which she won in 2005, and the London Marathon, which she won in 2006. Welcome, Deena Kastor.
Thank you so much for having me, Bob. I look forward to chatting with you today.
Well, I am so excited to have this opportunity to meet you. Your list of accomplishments as an athlete is incredible. And beyond that, throughout your journey, you've discovered a lot about yourself, about getting through the difficult times and unlocking your full potential. And these days, you're sharing those lessons as a motivational speaker and as a New York Times bestselling author. Your book, Let Your Mind Run, a memoir of thinking my way to victory. Deena, I loved it. I just found it so inspiring for both runners and non-runners alike.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that the aspects of success, whether you're an athlete or a professional in any field, is pretty much the same. You need grit and persistence, but the more important qualities of resilience and being able to bounce back from disappointments are probably the most important governors of success or contributors to success. Winning is great, but the defeats are really where you grow the most as a person.
Absolutely, and I want to talk to you about that today. So what has running taught you about yourself and what's possible?
I think running taught me that I have more control than I ever believed imaginable, that I thought I was the victim of negativity or fear when I stepped on the starting line, fear of losing, and instead of focusing on the winning. And I think being able to shift some of those thoughts in my mind was the single greatest contributor to getting on a path of continued growth. And I feel very grateful for that. Grateful for the coaching that I've had along the way, the mentors I've had along the way who encouraged me to read and expand and really take control over my destiny. And I feel that having that open mind, knowing that having just that crack in the door that there could be better on the other side was a great learning lesson.
Your husband, Andrew, has been your coach. You have a daughter, I think, 10? Is that right?
She's 8 years old.
She's 8 years old, named Piper. And you don't seem to be slowing down a bit. In March of this year, you broke the American Masters record in the 8K when you ran Chicago's Shamrock Shuffle. So you are still a very active runner. While many of us are struggling to get our 10,000 steps in a day, how much do you run on a normal day?
Oh my gosh, 10,000 steps is still great, especially if you ran 9,999 the day before. So you beat your record. I guess I just found a career that I not only enjoy. It doesn't feel like a sport that I would ever retire from, because it's how I flex my positivity every day. I show up, and I might be slower than I was a decade ago, but it's still on a daily basis. As I get out there and put in a 10-mile run, I am also really working on my mind. When I start to fatigue, I look for those tools that I've built over the years to try to get through that fatigue so that I can stop when I'm intended to stop and not stopping early. So I feel like I'm flexing myself physically, but more importantly, flexing that positivity muscle within me that I don't ever want to atrophy. So slowing down is actually okay to me, but gaining negativity isn't. So running is the vehicle for being able to stay on top of that, because if I'm practicing that in my career when I'm out there on the roads training in the mornings, if I'm practicing it then it becomes more habit to be able to rely on positivity when things get challenging in my personal life. And so I think it's important to know that our choices matter, not just give up on a moment because it gets hard, but know that you're defining your character and your decision making really matters. And so I tend to hold myself accountable when I start to slip or go to plan B or C a little too early. Sometimes it's necessary, but I make it about my character, and that's really important to me as a mom, as a wife, and as someone in my community, whether it's the running community or my immediate community here in Mammoth Lakes, California. I want to make sure that I'm representing myself the best I can.
Well, in the book, you talked about how you started running at a very young age, and because of sheer talent alone, success was really fairly easy for you. Those successes continued through high school and at the University of Arkansas, but then those voices in your head started telling you that you couldn't sustain that kind of success, that your best wasn't good enough, that maybe you're just not that talented. And I think we've all heard those voices before. When we face any big challenge, self-doubt becomes one of our biggest opponents.
Absolutely. And I have a lot of tools to combat self-doubt, and I can certainly speak to those. But I'll first speak to labeling. When we label children or prodigies, or even adults for that matter, as talented or smart, then if you get a B on a test, you lose your identity because you feel you're no longer smart. Or if you lose a race, you feel like you're no longer talented. So I like to use words like driven or committed, and that tends to create an action in people, as opposed to just feeling like they were born with a talent they have no control over. So I had a hard relationship with talent, and I feel grateful in the most part for writing this book, because it allowed me to have some resolutions about what it was and how I moved away from being talented to being hardworking and resilient and gritty. And so it was an important process to go through. And as a parent now, I make sure I don't tell my daughter how talented and smart she is. I say, wow, thank you for sitting back down to the piano after being frustrated, because you showed that you can sit down, take a deep breath and sit down and recommit. And so kind of praising those ideas instead of labeling somebody as talented or smart. And among other things we can label people as.
That's good. In your book, you also wrote a lot about the wisdom of Olympic distance coach Joe Vigil. When you met him, one of the first things he asked you was, "What is your philosophy?" Do you remember that story?
That was such a heavy moment. I was like, what? I just came here to run. A philosophy. Like, I felt like I needed to pay more attention in philosophy class in college instead of writing notes to my friends at the time. But it did make me think about the purpose behind what I was doing, instead of just picking a goal of winning a race and charging towards it. It was for a bigger purpose, and it took me a while to figure it out, and it's also evolved over the years. But I ended up writing this book because of the philosophy he helped shape in me. Through his own example, he taught me that the money we have in our pocket, the food we have on our table, the knowledge we have through our careers, that we obtain through our careers, that the value of it increases immensely the moment we share it with others. So it became very important to me to take some of these great truths that the sport has taught me over the years put it in this book to share with others. It seemed the easiest way to share it concisely with other people, because our passions and our drive for anything that we do, it takes a strong mindset and a resilient mindset to be able to get through the challenging parts. Because anytime we're trying to break barriers or gain some promotion in our job, a lot of us quit too soon at aspiring to those peaks and pinnacles in our careers. And so this shaping of our mindset should help us get us there with a little more ease and grace. I had to scratch my way through it, so I'm hoping people can learn through my misguided past and be able to get to their pinnacles in an easier, more graceful way.
Yeah, and I think when he had talked to you about that, your first answer was, my philosophy is I want to make the Olympic team, but then he said, no, that's a goal. And,
Yes, I think he had an expletive in there, as any brash coach would. But yes, the difference between goals and having a deeper purpose behind what we're doing, because it is easy to give up on your goals. I've done it a million times where in the struggle of a race that I want to win, I'm like, you know what? This hurts. Third place is good enough. It's still a podium. And I think when we have a deeper purpose behind what we're trying to accomplish, there's a little more emotion behind what we're doing, and we tend to push through the more challenging times.
So let's talk about some of the tools. One of the tools that you use to battle what Zig Ziglar, I think, used to call stinkin' thinking was the power of positive mantras. For example, during the 2005 Chicago Marathon, which you won, you kept repeating to yourself, define yourself, define yourself. How does that work?
Yes, and I think on the surface, define yourself it sounds like you're just trying to flex a muscle and be egotistical, but the emotion behind it for me is that I was trying to define myself on international stage, but I also wanted to define myself as strong and determined, and so I think when it becomes more about my character and less about a prize, I tend to get a lot more out of myself. And so defining myself was showing character to my coach who had dedicated so many years to building me as an athlete, to my husband who was so disciplined and motivated right alongside with me, stretching me out before every practice and drawing in ice baths after practices and going to massage school and giving me massages every day. He was so committed to my career. I feel really grateful, and so it was a way to define myself in a way that I could give back to them generously.
So how can just normal people, how can the listeners use these positive mantras in different situations?
Yeah, I think anytime we stop and pay attention to our thinking, that's the most important step. I thought I was a pretty upbeat person until I started really looking at the words going through my head. I might have been positive and upbeat for everybody else, but to myself, I treated myself like trash in the closed doors of my brain. And sometimes even with the intention of being motivating, my tone was really condescending in my head. So just stopping to pay attention, and then in those moments where you sound whiny or condescending, to really step back and reshape it in a way that can empower you a little bit more, because we are all born a little different in our thinking, some more positive, some more negative, but we shape that over our lives. We shape it more. We ingrain those patterns deeper and deeper. And so our brains are malleable, and so it's important to step back and pay attention and shape your brain the way that you need it to be there for you. And I think one of the most powerful lessons, everything that I practiced over the years, that everybody can do, seems very cheesy on the surface, it seems superficial, is writing a gratitude list. And I think at first it seemed very benign, like, oh, I like cold lemonade on a hot day after a long run. I like rocking on the front porch when my dog is running around. I like extra hot cappuccinos that scald as I sip on them. And but as the days went on, and I still had to keep adding unique items to this gratitude list, I realized that it was such a powerful exercise in that I went about my day searching for things to put on my gratitude list instead of begrudging the lack of parking spots close to the door at the grocery store, or the woodpecker on the side of the house. They kind of just became background noise as I was searching for things to be grateful for on that day, things that I appreciated. And so gratitude lists is something that everybody can do, but the power of continuing them is where it can really shape and reshape your mind.
That's great. And I want to talk more about the gratitude list in just a second. Wanted to ask you about a time that you felt a lot of disappointment in yourself. You had just run a 6K, I think, at Stanford, but Coach Vigil stopped you and showed you that disappointment wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Do you remember that?
Right. I remember it so clearly. It was one of the most, I would say, pivotal moments in my career. You'd think it would be some beautiful win on a grand stage, but for me that was probably the moment that has kept me in the sport the longest, and searching for greater ways to think through a process in a more productive way. I was training under Coach Vigil for quite a number of months and felt like he had built me so strong. And it was really the first time, because I thought my talent was working for me before, it was really the first time I wasn't running on talent, I was running on confidence. And I towed that line so confident that I was ready to make my first international team as a professional. And within the 30 minutes of that race, I went from confident to absolutely crushed. I think I was 27th place or something, and I expected to get in the top 5. And I held my composure until I got to my hotel room, and then just bawled into the rough fabric of the hotel towel, the over-bleached hotel towel. And my family came in and they talked about how I shouldn't be disappointed. I should be so proud of myself. I did so amazingly well. It's my first national championship. I should feel so proud. And pride did not feel right at the time. It just felt so far removed from what I was feeling, until Coach Vigil came to the room and said he was glad I was disappointed. And my first response was kind of this shocking, like, what a jerk. And then he went on to explain himself that being disappointed didn't mean I was a failure and that I failed in my attempt to run well. Being disappointed meant that I cared and I wanted more out of myself. I expected more out of myself. So on Monday, let's get back into our training shoes and continue working. He also went on to say Rome wasn't built in a day, but I don't think the cliche would have worked as much as hearing the fact that some of our harder emotions that we feel, whether it's anxiety or stress or disappointment, frustration, that we can be hijacked by them because they feel like negative emotions. But if we step back and really look at the root of them, they're usually because we care an awful lot about what we're doing. And I was able to use that same tactic grieving over a dog that I had lost, my chocolate lab Aspen, after 14 years. I was pregnant with Piper, and she passed away, and the grief felt like physically debilitating. I thought for sure I was messing up my child well before I even had her into the world. And I ended up realizing, much like disappointment, that grief was rooted in a deep, deep love. And the heavier and more painful the grief is probably equal to the love with which I shared those 15 years with her. So it made me put it back into a good emotion of that love and shared time, as opposed to the pain of the grief. So running has taught me, I think it's important when we go through these moments to make it relatable to our whole lives, because we don't just operate in a microcosm of one day. We should use all of the events of our lives as springboards for us to grow.
That's so great. A marathon is such a great analogy for life in general, which is one reason your book is so applicable to everyone, I think. Even if you never plan to run a marathon, you can equate the challenges of a marathon to nearly any major challenge that you face. And as you said in your book, whether you want to run faster, nail a job interview, improve your health, or simply have more energy and enjoy life more, you prepare yourself by trying to set the pace, and then you try to avoid the obstacles that you know are going to be there a part of the way, right?
Absolutely. And the obstacles really are, I truly believe, and I have to remind myself of this from time and time again, when I start to panic in a moment of challenge or adversity, that wait a second, pause right here, because after this moment, when you get through this moment, you're going to be stronger than you've ever been before, stronger, smarter, or whatever it is that it's going to take to get over that hurdle or around that challenge, and that makes me embrace it more. And instead of the oh no that happens immediately, I'm like, oh wait, this is the part I love. This is the game of it all. This is the game of growing. Is figuring out how I get through this with strength, determination, resilience, whatever it takes to get through. Find what it takes, and you will have grown because of this. And so I tend to feel a little bored when things are too easy. I've grown bored by it. So bring on a challenge.
Well, and the other side of that, though, is that you're not going to win every race, right? You're not going to be successful at every challenge that you take. But you talk in the book about how you can control how you respond to some of those things. So like it was in 2008 in a marathon, you broke your foot. And
yes.
In the World Cross Country Championship in Portugal, you got stung in the back of your throat, you blacked out, and you fell, and yet you finished 12th place. And that was an 8K race. Another one that just popped into my head was the more recent Tokyo Marathon. You said it was probably the most difficult marathon you ever ran. How do you take those kind of moments and turn them into learning opportunities?
Absolutely, and it takes practice. It doesn't just happen because you want it to. It takes practice and also being open to learning and growing, and not just feeling like the victim of a really bad moment. That it is an opportunity to grow, but you need to be open to that growth first and foremost. So the Tokyo Marathon that just happened, I actually got shoved and knocked down twice in the race, and it wasn't until 3 weeks after the race, when most of my body was healed and didn't feel as banged up, my shoulder was still in intense pain. I couldn't put clothes on comfortably or reach for my favorite coffee mug if my husband put it in the cupboard too high. So I went to the chiropractor, and it turned out my shoulder had been dislocated. So I finished 15 kilometers of the race with a dislocated shoulder, but I feel that way whether I won the race or I fell very short of reaching my goal. If I know I've put it all out there, I know that I can be proud. And I guess I'd use an analogy of a student who wants to be valedictorian of their class, and they sit in the front row and ask questions when they don't understand, and they get a tutor when they outsmart their parents, and they make sure all their homework is done before going to the mall with their friends, and on the final exam they miss a question and someone beats them to the valedictorian chair. They were a far better student having that goal than just settling for getting through school that semester. So I always remind myself of that if I'm I'm putting in the work and I'm making the choices to be the best I can day in and day out, then I'm going to be proud of that outcome no matter what happens, because I can't control what other people are, how their preparation is. So if I know I was my best day in and day out and on that race day, then I can pat myself on the back and celebrate heavily with my family that evening.
That's great. Okay, so let's get really practical here. The power of positivity. Let's talk about how we can start to build those positivity muscles. Some people are naturally inclined to have a positive outlook, and others, it's as much a learned skill as it is a personality trait. Isn't that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it just starts with instilling confidence in yourself. And I think if we have a goal of becoming the CFO of the company we work for, or we have a goal of completing our first 5K, that first and foremost, I would write down a few reasons why I believe I should succeed, because I think automatically we'd think of all the challenges in front of us and how likely it is that we're going to fail at what we're attempting to do. So just jumping in and disrupting that right off the bat, and just instilling confidence by writing reasons why you should succeed in that goal.
That's good. Okay, and the second one, and this is in your book, you put together the Optimist Guide, 7 mental habits for reaching your potential and living a more positive life. The second one in there that was building belief. How do you do that?
I think building belief comes with being that encourager in yourself. That, let's say, pretend that it was your friend that just told you about this big goal that you have for yourself, and let them know all the ways that they're gonna succeed in doing it. So I think it takes steps. You have to be realistic. Like, is this going to take 2 years, or is this going to take a decade to do? And so kind of make a roadmap of how to get there, and then with the support of why you believe you're going to succeed in it. There's going to be challenges along the way, but when you get challenged by something, counter it with something more positive. Sometimes it's just reframing your words, and other times it's again stepping back and being the friend to yourself of, you know what, this is hard, and you might be having a meltdown right now, but tomorrow you're going to wake up and it's going to be a fresh start, and you're going to be recharged, and we're going to go out and try again.
And Deena, also you had talked about writing down your goals as statements in the present tense, those positive affirmations. Do you remember that?
Yes, positive affirmations. And I think a positive affirmation on the surface looks like you're super arrogant. I am a national champion. I am CEO of this company. And it seems really arrogant. But I think when you start telling yourself that you are a higher being than you are in the given moment, your body actually creates, and this was so fascinating for me to learn at a young age, because I was going through this at the time that positivity was becoming a science, and they were studying the power of positive thinking, positive psychology. So it was fun to have these experiments on myself and then have it backed by science a few years later. But there is a chemical change in your body, a neurological change in your body when you are speaking in a different way. And that is the whole premise of self-fulfilling prophecies. So if we're going to lie to ourselves, we might as well lie to ourselves in a really positive way, so that we become bigger and stronger, as opposed to negative thinking that would make us weaken and become less of the person that we're aspiring to become.
That's terrific. Another one that you talked about is reducing negativity and growing positivity. Paying attention to your thinking patterns when you start experiencing negative thoughts and turning them into positive ones. You talked about that a little bit, but can you give us some examples?
I think one that seems to resonate so much with me, living in a hilly environment in the mountains of Central California, and I hear it from my teammates all the time, is hating hills. And I say to them, gosh, you let this hill get you before we even stepped foot on it by saying you hated this hill. But what about this hill's making me stronger every time I climb it? And then you're giving power to yourself instead of giving power to the hill. So it's those little things. And it all starts with paying attention to how we're talking.
So then you add those quick bursts of joy in your life throughout the day. Before you go into a meeting or something like that, you can look at a photo of your kids or just be encouraging to someone or call your spouse or your partner for that midday smile, right?
Yes, or do a quick Google search to get a good quote in your head. And I've done this with my daughter when she was looking in the mirror one day before school and said she hated her hair. I said, "Oh, really? Well, tell me 3 things you like about yourself." And that was a little harder to do, but I would not let her off of her stool in her bathroom until she gave me three things she liked about herself, just to bring her back to neutral after her negative comments. So I try to keep it positive here in the house as well as in my own head. The positive affirmations that I would write them on lipstick on my hotel mirrors. For if it was a race coming up, like my goal or a positive affirmation, I am the national champion. I've also used Post-it notes to do that, but I also do that for my daughter, writing on her mirror when we first remodeled our house. We've lived in the same house for 18 years, and we remodeled it a couple summers ago. And I wrote before we got the mirror put up in the bathroom, "Trust me, you look fabulous." Gotten in the habit of writing on her mirror also, just fun positive things, because I know that's where she goes before she gets out the door to go to the 3rd grade. She puts on her sunscreen in front of the mirror, so I want to make sure that I'm giving her some positive messaging before she gets out the door.
Another one that you talked about was be analytical, to identify your bad habits. Ask yourself why and look for a solution. Talk about that.
I think it seems strange in a practice of positivity to focus on bad, but I think in some instances it can let us off the hook once we identify them, and some instances we're finding solutions to our bad habits. So for let's say we like to hit the snooze button in the morning instead of getting out the door to go to the gym and get our exercise in, we're pushing snooze because bed feels so good, and then we feel down on ourselves the whole rest of the day because we started the day that way, and we that was the only time we had to get out and do something for ourselves. The next day, let's make it a little easier. So I'm going to put my shoes next to the bed. I'm going to make this whole process super easy. If it would come to sleeping in my running shoes to do it, I would do that. But making the process easy, because sometimes if there's too many steps to get out the door, we tend not to do it. So we don't want to put that much effort into it. So if I know that my alarm goes off in the morning and that coffee pot alarm has already gone on and my coffee is brewed in the kitchen and my shoes are right at the foot of the bed, I'm going to slide into those shoes, grab my cup of coffee, and then get out the door. That's great. Okay, so another one, rebounding. What do you think about crying? What do you think about punching the sky? On those days when you're so angry? We've all had them. In what's gonna get me out of this funk? Do I need to listen to an upbeat song on the radio? Do I need to put fresh flowers on the kitchen table so that I have a burst of sunshine in the house? Do I need to call a friend, go have a cup of coffee, and just connect with somebody? So just identifying what's going on and finding a way to treat yourself with kindness. We can be in a really bad place and still be kind to ourselves, and in doing so, it usually brings me out of that. Looking back at your amazing career, Deena, what would you say has been the biggest reward of running to you? Oh, I undoubtedly would say knowing that I had control over my mind, that my mind wasn't driving me, I was driving my mind, and I feel so grateful for being able to shape my mentality to be able to work with me when I need it the most. And it seems like because of that practice of positivity, even in silly situations like running, that it is readily available. Some real serious crisis is going on in my life, and I feel really grateful for the practice and the privilege of knowing how much control we actually have over our lives. Who inspires you? Oh my gosh, I actually practice gaining inspiration every day from the internet to social media, if it is something negative on social media, I scroll right past it. I'm looking for inspiration. I read books. I connect with people on a daily basis. There's a lot of, every single one of my friends in the community we live in inspires me with what they do every day, the amount of work they put in and finding time for their families. I love when I see balance in someone's life, and even love when I see someone's life off balance because they're throwing themselves into one passion or another. So I get inspired by so many people around me. The biggest influence in my entire life has been my parents and Coach V. Hill. I was adopted at birth, and I feel very fortunate and really feel that my first lesson in positivity came from them, because the reality of being adopted is that you were given up by one family and by another, and I have felt chosen my entire life.
Oh, that's great.
So feel grateful for them for that, and Coach V. Hill just for being an endless influence in a very critical time in my life when I was choosing a career after college, to be able to be in the hands of someone who's completely shaped the person I am today. I feel very grateful for him.
And
he's turning 90 this November.
Oh, wow.
November 2019.
Oh, that's terrific. So of all the things that you've accomplished, what are you most proudest of in your life?
I would definitely say family. I'm grateful for my career for shaping who I am so I can provide for my family in a spirited, emotional way. But I think it's allowed me to be a super committed and hands-on mom, and allowed me to really pour a lot into my relationship with my husband. So that the value of those two relationships are the most influential to me.
What is next for Deena Kastor?
Wow. I've always had we're coming into the fall season, whether it's spring or fall, it seems to always be marathon season. So traveling to the World Marathon Majors as a guest of the Chicago Marathon and New York City Marathon. I'll be at the Monumental Marathon in Indianapolis. And for the first time ever, I was asked to officiate a wedding. So that is a new role for me. It's a running couple in Minnesota. I'll be officiating their wedding this fall.
How
so
awesome.
There's always adventure, and the running community changes all the time, and there's new people emerging onto the running scene, and to me it is such a wonderful privilege to be able to connect with them at the races. It's what I live for and what I travel for.
We should never underestimate the power of positivity and gratitude in our lives, and Deena Kastor's life and success as a runner bears testament to that. Deena, thank you for being on the podcast. This podcast is produced by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. At HPE, we want you to have the knowledge, support, and resources you need to reach your full potential and find joy in every moment. If you're an HPE employee or family member, links to HPE's resources can be found on the Global Wellness page on HPE Insider, or if you're in the U.S., HPE Wellness. Our thanks once again to Deena Kastor, and thank you for listening in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast so you can catch upcoming episodes. Let's talk again soon.